All right, everybody. How's it going?
Hi.
We're just chilling, hanging. How's it going, everybody?
Good.
Nice. Cheers.
Cheers. What up? Let's start recording or wait?
It records already through YouTube and through Facebook.
Oh, okay. So
We're recording already.
Cool.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, for jumping on in. Appreciate it. I'm sure we'll get some more people here within the next few minutes. Just wanted to get rocking and rolling. Today is all about water. And in the true spirit of water, I was working on some irrigation stuff earlier. And of course, I was like, oh, I'm going to put in this really sweet little valve water treatment, Kineta magnetic water treatment device on my main line going to my entire backyard. I cut it and forgot that the timer kicks on and came inside and came back outside to about 100 gallons of water on the ground. It was a great time. So cheers to water. You never know what it's going to do. Woo! How's everybody doing out there?
Doing good. Fabulous. Good.
Nice. That's right. So wanted to talk a little bit about water. This is being recorded. We do have a couple people that jumped on through YouTube Live. I'm seeing. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Once again, throwing it out for you guys. Not everybody has to join us through Zoom. If you guys want to interact, feel free to jump on through Zoom, and you can be one of the talking heads here. If you don't want to interact, feel free to just jump onto Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Thanks, guys. Everybody who's over there checking us out, we appreciate it. We are going to pick up the frequency of these educational nerd sessions that we're doing, and we're going to go from every other week to every week. We're excited about it, and we're always looking for topics, comments, interaction, experts to come to the table, any of the above plus more. So with that being said, we've got some other team members on here. Introduce yourselves. Say what up. How's it going?
Bug lady.
I'm Kyle. I'm our microbiologist and product specialist and general consultant here with the company.
Mike Ballard, Global Sales Director. You're welcome.
I guess I'll chime in. Taylor, LA, sales consultant. Anybody else?
Ryan, Florida, sales consultant.
Philip, sales rep, Key to Life in Minnesota.
Woo! To the man!
Jimmy Johnson, say hello.
Yeah, May.
What's up, everybody?
Jimmy, how's it going, bro?
Hey, Jim.
How's that greenhouse project treating you, brother?
Oh man, that's a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. We're thankfully almost done with it though.
How many square feet did you do?
It's 32 by 72.
32 by 72.
Yep.
Nice, man.
Not too bad.
Have you met Brian, our Florida rep? Oh, you have. You guys have met, right?
Yeah, Brian came out to the place where I was working at last year and checked the place out.
Awesome.
Good to see you, Jim.
You too, brother.
Heck yeah.
Marvin.
What was that, Mike?
I see Marvin is on from Barbados. How you doing, Marvin?
I'm good. How's everyone doing?
All right.
We're doing.
I'm actually here with someone who's going to be listening to the meeting and who's going to join us via our Skype broadcast presently. He's with me.
Excellent. Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Chris. His name is Chris. He's putting him with his dog right now.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, he's going to join us briefly. There was another gentleman that was supposed to join us as well, but I think he's caught on the road running around, so he might not be able to join us for the entire meeting.
Awesome. Well, there's probably going to be stragglers on and off throughout the whole thing, so we'll get rocking and rolling. And like I said, in true tribute to water and how much I love it, I had to flood my backyard this morning. So keeping it interesting, keeping it very interesting. Who's got some fun water stories to share or some experiences to share about how important water is either in your home or your garden? Chime in, anybody?
I'll just say, just again, personal life thing. Where I grew up in a real small town in a real rural area. And I just, I was super used to just drinking out of the water faucet, just that straight city water, very low or if any chlorine. When I moved to Colorado, first thing I noticed was that you turn on the water faucet and it just reeks of chlorine and chloramine. I tried drinking it for a while and it just really messed up my gut biome and messed up my digestive system. So I got a zero water filter to clear out a bunch of the chlorine and stuff. And I've had it ever since, and just back to feeling normal with a normal gut microbiota. So even just your regular drinking water, it's important to have it, clean and apt of things that kill microbes if possible.
That's very, very important, man. I agree. Sometimes I can feel the effects, it seems like, when you just drink a bunch of tap water and you just you're like hydrating. I'm drinking water all day, but it doesn't seem like it truly, really hydrated you. So we're going to dive into some of the science behind that exactly, and how the ions can actually either stick or not stick to other ions in extracellular matrix of humans or plants. So, Phil, I know you've got a couple good stories about water because you lived in the mountains for a long time with some gnarly water, I remember.
Yeah, so out in Kremling, we had all that sulfur water from the shale oil that was out there. So we had to bring in our own water when we wanted to water our plants every single time. We had to bring it in. Definitely couldn't drink the water out there. It was just nasty. I mean, I remember every time taking a shower, you just smelled like rotten eggs. It was real fun out there. I was really happy to move and get into a different spot after that. It's all around Colorado. Every place is different. Some place has amazing water, like up in Alma, Colorado, some of the best water out there. But then you go over towards Kremling and it's all shale oil water. And, you got different worlds out there. So that's one of my stories with the water that I had to deal with out there. So
I remember taking a drink off under the faucet at that house out in Kremling. And I was like, oh my God, what is that?
Terrible. I was hungover one evening and there was a bottle of water out that I thought was water. It ended up being a bottle of gin. I was not very happy. It's the only thing that was there. So, always key to stock up on good water. Have your water supply around. You never know when you really need to take a good drink of some good water.
Yeah, and when you look at grows in Northern California, holy shit! Water is a huge deal. There's fights and shootouts over water and shit up there. It's crazy. And also they're straight destroying the forest and reverting rivers and making their own ponds and dams and stuff. So water, guys, remember, water is the root of civilizations. When we look at how humanity first early developed, there was so much center around water. Like that was where all the first cities were. That was where all the first, trade areas were. That was where all the really life itself. I always say, if there is a true singular key to life, it's water. Because without water, the microbes can't live, the soil and the plants can't have a relationship, algae can't exist, all these other protozoa, nematodes, soil food web items, definitely not plants, definitely not humans. Water is key to life at the end of the day.
On Earth, there is nothing that can live or survive without water.
Yeah. It's really, really awesome. We all owe water. Thank you. And it's really funny there's so many different ways to look at water. There's ways to look at it chemically, right? Chemically, what are the chemical constituents? There's ways to look at it ionically. What are the ionic constituents? There's ways to look at treatment of it. Okay, you have what you're dealt with. How do you treat it and optimize it? Then optimization and efficiency. How do you maximize it? How do you deliver it as optimally as possible? How do you make sure you're not wasting it? All of these different things are very, very important. But also there's further deeper science like energy levels. And that's where things like the spirit of water come into play. And actually, water and the spirit of water and the triple helix brewer, which I started the whole company with back in the day, was really the relationship which founded Key to Life because of water and its energy patterns. Obviously we always look at like how Australia versus America and the toilets flush for no apparent reason, just due to energy reasons and blah, blah, blah. Some people say it's the plumbing. Some people say it's different reasons. Some people say it's energy pull from the planet. There's a lot of different reasons, but also there are energetic properties to water. And I always like to say that is what creates the vibe of an individual person, right? Because what are we? We're giant bags of water walking around. Like we're like 75 to 80% water or something like that. And if you look into the spirit of water, the last name Emoto, I'm pretty sure I could actually grab the book, but it talks about how you basically by talking and by your energy can program water, whether that's the water inside of yourself or whether that's the water in your garden or that you're drinking or that you're using ceremonially or whatever it may be. If you look at water, it's tied to ceremonies for thousands and thousands of years. Why? Because it is the key to life, So if you look at the spirit of water, they've actually scientifically taken water and they've told the water, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. And it doesn't really form. It forms one way. And then they tell water, I love you, you're beautiful, I'm grateful for you. And the water forms these beautifully geometric, mathematical, crystalline style structures. And it's really because water, if you look at water and electricity, people say that they don't mix. Actually, they're the best two mixing things on the planet. It's just that you don't want to be around when it happens because water transfers through electricity very, very easily over large distances. So, not as fast as, other things like potentially, light and other things. But it's really, really interesting when you look at the spirit of water and starting from the base energy level on how you can optimize the structure of the ions in the relationship. And I believe that once you've done that with water, that all of these other things that we talked about work better. Like, for instance, chemistry and ionic levels. We always think about, what are the main things we think about when we look at water on a chemistry side? Let's get it interactive.
It's
Kyle's cheating. I want everybody but Kyle.
Yeah, I was
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, brother. I love you. Come on, everybody.
Well, the hardest part is reclaimed water. And I built golf courses up in Lake Tahoe, and you're dealing with different substances and resources from.
Come back, Kyle. Come back. Sorry.
Kyle jumped off a little bit there. So I don't remember exactly on a full scale what they treated with. It's been a while. Reclaimed water on the golf course situation, or even city water they use. Because I saw in Southern California, Arizona, probably as well, you see a lot of reclaimed water situations, which makes it difficult. And probably high in sodium, I most likely think so. Kyle, do you know more in detail what it's in reclaimed water? Tate? I'm not sure anybody else knows.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's very regionally specific. It's very area specific. It's very population density specific. There's a million things that go into that whole topic of reclaimed water. And that's why I guess just as a broad point, just like we read soil reports and things of that nature, having a good water analysis is essential to understanding what you're dealing with and what is actually in your water, so you know how to address it. Like in Colorado here, like Philip was saying, there could be excess sulfur levels because of of mines and oil shale and stuff like that around. There could be excess calcium because it comes from a limestone runoff area and it's just full of calcium from limestone. It can be if you're in golf courses in particular, if they're reclaiming water in a localized region, they use some crazy amounts of fertilizer on their salt-based fertilizers on their grounds. So reclaiming and reusing that water, you have to mitigate nitrate levels and things of that nature, so you're not spiking algae plumes. It is in the middle of city centers. The water that's recycled through septic and city water systems. There's people prescription drugs traces from urine and stuff like that. There's people literally flushing drugs down the toilet because they got raided or something like that. There's a million different things that go into the use of reclaimed and recirculated water sources. Again, we could spend the whole hour talking about just that for sure.
Yep, huge topic. Huge topic. Do you remember when the dam that actually held the majority of LA's water was having that water issue where there was a chemical reaction? Oh my God, I just watched a documentary on this like a month ago. But basically it was actually contaminating all of LA's city water supply. And the way that they stopped it was by cooling the surface temperature of the water by putting these little black, biologically friendly floating balls into the entire thing. Actually, it was caused because it would have too much algae, and the algae plumage would then have a chain reaction with some other chemical that they were using to treat the algae, and then it was downstream hurting people. And basically they did a whole Netflix documentary, and they introduced these little black biologically friendly orbs, and it shaded the top of the water, completely got rid of all of the algae, then completely got rid of the chemical that they had to use to fight the algae, which then got rid of the chemical reaction and restored the water quality of LA's water supply. Is that kind of...
They were doing aeration and stuff like that, and barley itself, and different ways to treat algae issues and concerns. Farms have that problem as well. You can do aquaponics. It's a good way to actually treat the water as well.
Oh yeah.
That sounds like they had an algae bloom.
Yep, they had hardcore algae blooms. Yep.
It's very toxic, yes.
Yep. Yeah. But it's interesting because on the flip side, that's as far almost downstream as it can get. On the flip side, where myself and Phil started growing up in the mountains, that's where you kind of really start to think about the energy of water and how nature and the mountains and the noises that the mountains make actually programs the water with a energy spirit, so to say. But most importantly, it actually does something scientific. So let's move to, I guess, chemistry side of water. And one of the most forgotten about parts of water when I opened this up and I was like, hey, what are the main things we think about with water as a grower, right? What do we think about as a grower when we look at water?
Electrical conductivity.
EC, boom.
The pH. of your water.
pH, boom.
Right?
Yeah. Alkalinity, yeah. pH. Parts per million of
Yeah, parts per million.
total dissolved solids. Very often do we get past those. Almost never do we get past those. Excuse me. Well, the next obvious one is oxygen levels being DO, or dissolved oxygen. But then the next one, which does correlate with your dissolved oxygen levels, is your ORP, which is your oxygen reduction potential. So you can take advantage of free radical negative ions in many styles of growing, whether that's, you know, in your air and in your atmosphere through HVAC treatment, or whether it's in your water, or some people try and do it in the container that individually, or whether it's in your reservoir via like the Cyclone Tea Brewer from Key Life. It's, you know, really interesting when we look at oxygen reduction potential, because when we look at what ruins, okay, when you harvest cannabis or any plant, what degrades it?
Oxygen.
Boom, oxygen. So the oxygen degrades any product, anything that was living, once it's taken away from its water source, which in the example of a plant is its root system. That's where it's uptaking its water. So you harvest the plant or you harvest the fruit, it's no longer attached to the plant. It's no longer attached to the root system. The roots are no longer attached to the water, right? And it's the most simple, basic, rudimentary way to look at it. Well, when we look at a fruit, when it comes off of the vine directly, it has a negative ion potential, because these negative ions are charged by the living energy of the plant, of the water, and of the sun, and all of Mother Nature's beautiful creations. When water comes out of the tap, it is positively charged. Our body is positively charged, most things. And when we want to, do I have this correct? Am I speaking in the correct terms to you guys? Are you guys, does this make sense? We're like a battery, right? And our ions, our tissue, our extracellular matrix is majority positive ions. Now, obviously, we've got negative ions inside of us too, blah, 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 blah. But we tend to respond better to negative ion source water. Well, all tap water is positive ion source. All tap water. So what this does, it's the same thing as reverse osmosis. If reverse osmosis goes through a metal pipe or a copper tube, it will actually eat through the tube, because it polarizes, and its polarity, or its polar nature, which is completely opposite. It's negative in ion structure, but has zero chemicals attached to it, or no ions attached, because it's completely 0 parts per million, and it's just pure. You are going to literally pull the metal out of the copper pipes, and you could cause holes in your pipes. That's why they always give plastic tubing with reverse osmosis systems. It's the same way with humans. That's why we don't want to drink reverse osmosis water. It'll strip your body and your bones of minerals and of calcium and all sorts of things, and it'll cause really bad health problems. Now, not one time. I'm talking over and over, repeated back-to-back use of these, drinking of reverse osmosis water. So when we look at oxygen reduction potential, that is regardless of its parts per million or it's EC. Whoa. What up?
Do you want to mute real quick, buddy?
He's got it. But yeah, so the oxygen reduction potential is very, very important to take into mind. Most growers don't. Most commercial facilities have no clue about it. And if they were simply taking advantage of this one thing, it'd be very important. So that's the chemistry side. Anybody else have any fun things to chime in on the chemistry side? Obviously, we could go on this for weeks alone. Continue.
I actually have a question. Here in Barbados, recently we experienced some volcanic ash. So one of the local farmers, my friend here, Chris, he was asking a question about the water, the rainwater mixing with the volcanic ash and then feeding it to the plants. He experienced a process where the plant became a hermaphrodite. But he also notices that it's extending the fruiting process.
Interesting. I mean, you'd really, to get down deep with that, you'd have to analyze that particular volcanic ash that he's getting, because there's many different actually fertilizers that have volcanic ash in them, as well as rock dust minerals. And actually, there's a really interesting article for any of you guys to check out that's called Farming with Rocks. And Farming with Rocks was a 30-year study that proved that you could actually farm and have the same yields with the same vigor and growth patterns with volcanic ash and rock-based minerals that you can NPK.
Okay.
I would also say, for like in Colorado right now, we're experiencing some issues where areas of where forest fires have happened, and where the fires were really, really intense and had complete burnouts. Now this year we have an incredibly wet year. We have almost 3 times the amount of water that we normally have. And what actually happens is 2 things. One, because there's no vegetation in the way to slow water down as it kind of trickles through, things like mudslides and things like that happen significantly. But what also happens is that ash and that high carbon containing content ends up on the lower plane levels, and obviously water runs downhill, and the water kind of takes this ash and this burnt charred biological material and brings it down to the lower levels. And what you'll see in those lower levels when that water gets down there and that ash gets down there is a significant increase in vegetative activity, because it's basically sequestering a bunch of carbon and bringing a lot of those sort of trace minerals and stuff like that are in this ash downhill to lower areas, and it causes vegetation blooming. Now, in the case of your volcanic ash, as far as particularly causing hermaphroditic traits, what may have happened is that specific strain or cultivar that you're working for may have had some hermaphroditic traits already present in it, and by increasing carbon content may have also increased nutrient uptake significantly. And what happened there is basically the plant gets super healthy, and it allows it to express its full genotypic potential, part of which may have contained hermaphroditic traits. So it kind of boosted the growth and the vigor so much that it's like, oh, I can be whatever I want to be now. And it has some hermaphroditic traits in it. And that may have caused the expression of those hermaphroditic traits as that quick spike in plant health, if that makes sense.
Is there some kind of analysis that could be done on that volcanic ash to?
Yeah, that's exactly what he was trying to verify, because he was saying the exact same thing is a possibility.
Yes. So
all the plants he had, that was the only one that actually became hermaphroditic.
Weird.
Right. So I would say the analysis you would want, I would want a mineral analysis, I would want a chemical analysis, and if possible, I would want a secondary and micronutrient analysis of that water as well, just to kind of get a complete picture of basically an ion and a chemical level what was present in there. I hear a lot of people ask all the time, oh, did this cause my plants to harm? Did that cause my plants to harm? Did this cause my plants to harm? Outside of photo period manipulation and an abrupt uptake in a high hormone containing product, there really isn't much that you can do to force hermaphroditic traits from a nutritional standpoint outside of making them incredibly healthy and allowing them to express their full genotypic potential. So it's not. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is even if you get all the analysis of that, it'll just kind of tell you what was spiked the most that may have led to that potential increase in health. But there's no one thing on that type of analysis you can be like, oh, it contains yada yada. So this is why the plant harms specifically because it contains elevated levels of this one thing. They're really, I mean, especially from volcanic ash, there's not like there's a shit ton of hormones or something like that in volcanic ash. It's mostly mineral content.
Yeah.
We also had a tropical storm a couple of days ago, so then the plants were moved from outdoor to indoor.
Oh, well, it's just a stress response then.
Yeah, exactly.
But in terms of the testing, would it be instructive then to test both the water and the soil?
It would be more instructive if you had a before and after. If you had a before soil test and now you have checked the soil after that has happened to see what is different. Same thing kind of with the water. It'd be interesting to see what the water was like before, and then with this major influx of volcanic ash, what the water looks like now. But again, like I said, there's no real one thing that's going to be like, oh, I look at a water analysis and I see this, therefore that's why your plant's harmed.
And I'm going to guarantee that it's because you moved it from outdoor to indoor. Has nothing to do with the volcanic ash.
I would say that it's much more likely that is the contributing factor.
Oh, I'd put my house on it. Has nothing to do with the volcanic ash. It has definitely everything to do with moving the plant from outdoor to indoor when there was a storm outside. For sure.
More than likely a temperature difference, more than likely a photo period difference as well in and among that, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Which then produces the stress response.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yep. Stress will do weird things, and water can heal so much stress with so many different things that it's crazy. It's crazy how it can really just help plants. And you go to somebody's grow and you're like, dude, adjust your watering frequency. Boom, everything starts really, really going a lot differently. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Same thing with people. I mean, you do anything. You go home, you're sick. What's the first thing doctor says? Get some rest, drink lots of water. You get done with a long massage. What's the first thing they say? Drink lots of water. You get done working out. What should you do? Drink lots of water. It's the response to stressors to mitigate stress in your body. It's a buffer within your body. And 78% of people walk around dehydrated most of the day.
It's actually one of the most common health issues that spirals into a lot of other health issues. And it's personally one of my biggest issues. I try to stay hydrated, and it's really difficult because here in Colorado, water and air and altitude have a nasty relationship to keeping it really dry all the time and keeping everybody really dry. It's actually kind of funny. Did you know that one of the biggest things linked to obesity is dehydration? Well, I wouldn't say one of the biggest.
Well,
it's one of them.
It's one of them, but you don't want to oversaturate a plant with water either. It has to be at fill capacity. You don't come to wilting points. It's very important to understand what that plant requirement is for, water requirement in the soil, which we call fill capacity. So you have to understand your output of your sprinklers, distribution uniform. There's a lot of factors go into it as well, how to apply it correctly.
Yeah, there are very few plants in the world that that want or need standing water in and around the root systems at all times. Like rice is like one of the only cultivars that we farm with that needs constant water in the root zone all the time to be healthy. Pretty much everything else, if you're to 100% to Taylor's point, if you're overwatering, it can be one of the quickest detrimental factors to a grow. Absolutely. It causes root rot. It causes incorrect bacterial buildup. It causes, the nutrients not to stick around. It does all kinds of not okay things as well.
Well, especially in an outdoor grow environment. I mean, indoor you're doing hydro, so it's definitely regulated differently. An outdoor situation with drip systems, you really have to understand, again, distribution output, your ET, weather, stations and so forth of what's going on for transpiration and evapotranspiration. It's called evapotranspiration, which is extremely important to understand that. And the depth of your root zone system. So you want to flush the system out of all the salts and other buildup of toxins in the soil. So you just don't want to irrigate every day at a shallow root zone. You need to understand how long does it get to, what's root zone in cannabis typically on a healthy plant? Is it 18 inches typically, probably? So how long did it irrigate to get that 18 inches of field capacity, not saturation? How long to complete it before putting it at the point? It's extremely important. And your soil type, what you're working with, is also in fact with that. Slope, erosions, all that kind of factors are important as well.
Absolutely, and there is something to speak of as well to plants reaching for water. When they get slightly underhydrated, their roots will be like, oh crap, there's no water here. I got to go find some, and it will proliferate root development as well and cause them to reach out and tap even further and create more root radicals to find different pockets to find more water as well. So there's definitely a healthy balance with the two for sure.
And that's where the compost tea comes into effect in biology. You break action, regulate pH, and search for water. The roots can search for water. They're lazy. If you feed it like anybody else, they don't want to move. It's at the top of the soil. Your stress limitations are higher. So it's deeper. It can, deal with other stresses and hermaphrodite issues for the curve. So this can affect the plant as well. So it's all factored into it.
I've heard you guys talk a lot about overwatering and what a big problem that is and how most weed growers tend to overwater. And that's like the biggest, I've heard you say, Kyle, that's like the biggest single problem you've seen is overwatering. I wondered if you could also talk about reverse osmosis and some of the issues around RO water.
You mind if I throw something in here real quickly?
Yeah, please.
Shoot, we want this to be interactive. Anybody feel free.
So, Taylor kind of touched on it, but I think one of the foundational points is starting with the physical system that you're dealing with. And that'll start with a soil test. Knowing what type of soil you have is going to dictate, and I came a little bit late to the party, so forgive me if I'm off topic here, but if you're dealing with salts or you want to flush the system or anything like that, you're going to need to know what your soil texture is. Your soil texture is going to dictate your water holding capacity. It's also going to dictate your infiltration rate, your rate of conductivity. So I would suggest always start with a soil test. That's going to tell you what your physical and chemical limitations and opportunities are. And a lot of your overwatering probably stems from the fact that you have more clay in the soil than you thought, and so it's retaining water at a higher level than the sandier soil would, and so you end up fertilizing for watering more frequently than you need to. Yeah, especially if it has clay, it's the smallest part that there is, and so it's going to sheet off. So you have to actually do multiple run times, so it actually percolates downward. So more run time with clay is better. So to really do a quick test of your soil type, just do a jar test. Just put some soil in a jar, put a little, soap in there, dish soap, shake it up, look at it, and then measure and take the pyramid and understand exactly kind of where you're at, and then you can work with that. And amend it accordingly with compost, which is a good amendment, maybe some vermicompost as well. Again, we offer that as well. The single biology would help balance that out. You want about 5% organic matter, which is typically what you want.
These ones are shit.
So what was that? I missed that one. So yeah, that's it.
Anybody else? Jump in.
Weather station allows too irrigation, so I recommend as well fish product. Anyway.
Yeah, still wanted to hear chime in about reverse osmosis water and, the effect on electrical conductivity and why that's important?
Kyle, shoot it down. Knock it down, bud.
Yeah, man. So, kind of like Tate was already talking about here, a little bit with reverse osmosis. It's when you strip the water completely, it's kind of like taking a canvas and wiping it off completely, and then putting some kind of like of an oil slick on the top of it, and then trying to paint over it. Anything you try and put on there is really just kind of run off and not really, stick where you kind of put it. And then from a biological perspective, especially, reverse osmosis water in particular is probably the most detrimental thing that you can use when you're trying to harbor biology. A lot of the microbes that we're in particular are trying to focus on the inoculation and implementation of are gram negative or gram positive small style bacteria, and that has things to do with the specific charge that's around the outside extracellular matrix of the specific microbe itself. And when you take an incredibly stripped out, incredibly polarized form of water, because water by itself, H2O, is incredibly polar. On one side it's incredibly positive, on the other side it's incredibly negative, and they kind of push in the opposite direction. And when you take an incredibly polarized source of water like that and apply it to a microbe in that area, it literally physically rips the microbe in half. It just kind of grabs onto that polarity of those small particles that create the outside cell wall and just rips them apart completely. So it literally is like a nuclear bomb for most of the biology from a microbiological perspective that we are trying to harbor. Again, it's that I really tell people, like if you're going to use RO because you have such a bad contamination issue that you have no other choice than to start over, you make sure you're putting something in the water before you add biology, whether it be a nutrient, a mineral source, just a sugar source, something besides the biology. Because if you're dropping your biology into RO water, it's like dropping them into a pool of lava, man. They're just never going to survive. So there's tons of reasons why. Even if you're going to use RO water for nutrients, what I recommend about a 50-50 blend of RO water and tap water, just so you don't have that straight blank oily canvas that you can't really paint anything on. You want to be able to utilize multiple different polar vectors within the water to grab onto water to the nutrients that you're using specifically, so that they can actually create a homogeneous mix instead of creating all kinds of weird fallout. Okay, anything to add to that?
Nope.
This is Ryan. Does everybody here understand osmotic pressure?
Yes, sir. But would you please explain it to the rest of the group?
So whenever you have a concentration of something, whether that's heat or like you get burned because there's a concentration of heat flowing in one direction towards your finger, right? If you have a semi-permeable membrane and you have a highly diluted or a solution that has nothing in it, like RO water, what's going to happen is every living thing in that system that comes in contact with that RO water is going to want to give up all the stuff that's inside its cell water, right? RO water would kill us too, right? Because what happens is it pulls everything. If there's a gradient of anything, so if there's nothing in the water, you have a gradient of iron or copper or calcium or just solutes in general. They're going to want to flow to that area of less concentration. So everything in that system that the RO comes in contact with is going to give up basically everything within its cellular structure to satisfy that concentration gradient.
Super correct and direct basic way to explain that 100%. Right? And like I said, it's literally everything. If they're on this side of the cell wall, there's just more potassium or more calcium or more you freaking name it. It is going to, the flow of ions will move towards the area of where they are not, to try and equal that balance in between that semi-permeable membrane. So yes, in every way, shape, or form, thank you for that explanation, Brian. I appreciate it.
And in layman's terms, if I could, it's really just that it's removing everything. It's removing every mineral, including, obviously, it's removing toxic substances, but it's removing every mineral as well, right?
Every mineral.
Anything with the polarity charge to itself.
Got it.
So we talk about water as a solvent in which all biological life takes place. And Kyle kind of touched on it, that dipole nature of water having a positive and a negative charge, right, facilitates a lot of these processes. But whenever you have a concentration gradient of 0 to something, that something is going to flow in that direction. So everything. So everything wants to go in that direction until the equilibrium has been established.
Hey Ryan, if you could, maybe you could just remind us all who you are and who you work with.
Sorry, my name is Ryan Taylor. I'm a PhD soil scientist at CSU who recently started working for the Colorado Department of Agriculture as the new soil health specialist, and I'll be running the new soil health program here in Colorado.
Sweet.
Thank you. I thought that was you.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
That's why we do this. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. And I've ran into a lot of growers who, hey, I'm having this nutrient deficiency. I'm having a nitrogen deficiency. I need more CalMag. I need more bloom boosters, all these different things.
You need more CalMag. Lots of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
55-gallon barrels of it. That's what I see all the Asians buying in the wholesale. 55 gallons of Botanicare CalMag.
Exactly.
The solution for everything for a beginner grower.
Yeah. So
you like weed that doesn't
where
burn?
was I going with that? Now I totally lost my train of thought. 100% gone.
You were talking about nutrient.
Oh yeah. Growers using reverse osmosis. So yeah, basically, I need more CalMag. Well, actually, you're using 100% reverse osmosis. I just ran into this recently in Oklahoma with a very experienced grower. I only use 100% reverse osmosis. We were like, you do what? You don't add anything back to it at all? No, man, that's what I've always done. It's like, now I know why you've always gotten your ass whooped at all your grows. Never mind. But yeah, so basically, you got to make sure, guys, that if you are doing reverse osmosis water, the best blend is 50-50. Half dechlorinated, half reverse osmosis. That's the best blend, in my personal opinion. I see a lot of people doing 70-30. I see some people doing 80-20. 80% tap, 20% reverse osmosis. That's fine too. At the end of the day, I'm a bigger fan of making sure that I've got some type of treatment on the water to make sure that I'm killing any type of virus, which is where things like Sanidate come into play. And Sanidate is a great water treatment, as well as another product that's called Garden Clean. And Garden Clean is a chlorine dioxide. And if you inject either of these via dosatron or edatron at about 10 parts per million into your input water supply for even your stock tanks or your fertilizer injector water, you're going to be starting with a sterilized somewhat slate to make sure that you're not introducing pathogens in your system. To do things like this on the front end is very, very important, especially when we're using compost tea. We're not lacking biology. We're not lacking biology in any way, shape, or form. I'm just guaranteeing that I don't have any type of pathogen in my input water soil system. It's very, very important. Has anybody dealt with that?
I compost tea all the time. Yeah.
Or treating input water with Sanidate 5 or Sanidate 12 and or chlorine dioxide. Or carbonic acid is another one that you can treat it with, which is basically CO2 injected into water with once you remove one oxygen, it goes to carbonic acid, which is also another cost-effective way to fluctuate your pH, guys. Anybody who's using additional phosphoric acid to adjust your pH, the best way to do it, the way that Waterworld does it, or large swimming pools, city municipal pools, most of them, they use definitely some chemicals, but a lot of them also use dissolved oxygen treatment and other carbonic acid
treatments. I've seen a lot of those places use UV light treatments as well for antibacterial properties. It's so, just to kind of reset the conversation here a little bit. What we really want people to understand is, what water solution is best for you based off of your system. Is the type of water that you have, do you really only need a sediment and dechlorination process? Or do you have an incredibly contaminated water source that you do need to do a fair amount of stripping away and kind of starting over fresh and mixing up other things that help kind of repaint the canvas? Or do you have incredibly good well water from a great source that you want to be able to use everything in that water source in order to benefit your plants and the biology there within? There's a lot of different situations. There's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, as it were. There's many different methods of treatment, like Tate was saying. Do we filter? Do we treat chemically? Do we treat with UV? Do we treat with ozone? Do we treat with dissolved oxygen? Do we treat with, based on what you're trying to treat, what is the best treatment method for you? Speaking of that, does anybody have any questions about, hey, this is my particular situation, this is what I use, what do you recommend for water treatment for me?
For your grow and your scenario.
Well, I kind of have a unique one here. I have a grow out going on right now, but one of the things that I wanted to test with was more foliar feeding. And do you have any nutrient suggestions as far as testing and trying to get more advancements in foliar feeding to get more nutrients directly to the cola, to the bud?
We 100% do. And that definitely does interact with water as well. Kyle, you want to take that one away for him real quick?
Yeah, for sure. So with foliar feeding, foliar nutritional feeding has the potential. There's a few studies out there that have given suggestion that it can actually increase your overall nutrient uptake by up to 30% by applying nutrients in a foliar feed for sure.
I've heard a lot higher than that. I've heard way higher than that.
I've heard double. Way higher. Yeah, but it's at least it will increase your, because most people don't foliar feed any nutrients. It's they're only foliaring IPM products at the most, if that, and that's about as far as they go for foliar feeding. Yeah, I've heard high as double. I've heard potentially even triple the application uptake. I've heard of people that
I've heard 300%.
Yeah, I've heard only people that only use foliar nutrients as a nutrient application source. They don't root drench any nutrients whatsoever. It's only foliar nutrients. So I've seen this for sure. Definitely proliferating in the industry. So the thing with foliar feeding nutrients is a couple of things. First and foremost is, like I say, clean nutrient water source that has a good mixability factor and an ionization factor to be able to use those nutrients and to get them to the leaf surface where they need to be. Second is the form of nutrient that you're applying. Generally, we want a more gentle form of nutrient, something that's not radicalized in a pH way, something that's not incredibly high in salt value, because as that, incredible high amounts of salt on the leaf surface can tend to build up salts on the leaf surface, and then you get this sort of salt and water issue where you're not getting any nutrient uptake. Third thing would be I would recommend an addition of some form of either mechanical or biological uptake ability increase, or something like a humic acid or a fulvic acid or a micro product that can specifically allow the mobilization of those nutrients to go as quickly as possible. We say all the time, like if you're having a nitrogen deficiency or something like that, foliar spraying something like our revitalized product that's just amino acids and nitrogen directly to the affected area is the quickest way to get that nutrient to the area where you're seeing ill effect. Reason being is, instead of having to find it in the soil, get it across the cellular barrier into the root zone, from the root zone up to the stem, from the stem out to the tip of the leaf, or out up through the bilateral branches, down through the bilateral branches, down into the leaf surface. That's a whole lot of roadblocks and a whole lot of stops to get there. When if you have it in a gentle form, typically a carbon-based form is generally best. But when you have it in that form and you directly apply it to the affected area, the plant has to input little, if no, energy to be able to get that nutrient where it needs to be. So there's, again, I'm sure we could go way, way harder on this topic for sure. But actually, I'd be interested. Ryan, did you have any input on foliar mechanisms and uptake? Because I know you're, as a soil scientist, again, I know you're very familiar with nutrient mobilization and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm a soil guy, so I'm not too hip on foliar feeding and hydroponics, but I have always foliar fed myself, and I've heard good things. Nothing as much as 300%, but I don't have a whole lot to add. Sorry.
All right, no worries. No worries. Tate, do you have any add on there?
Definitely. That was actually something that I saw trigger some of the very first largest yields I got in my life, where on a 4x4 with 4 plants, I was yielding 4.5 to 5 pounds in that amount of space. Under 1,000 watt single end fixture. And the reason that I attributed it to was a couple different things. Number one, which was foliar feeding, which was, as Kyle talked about, injecting certain nutrients basically into the plant via mainline. So when we look at a stomata, which is a stomata, as you guys all know, is on the bottom side of a leaf. It's the little bumpy things on the bottom side of the leaf. That is the capillary to the lung of the plant. And when we when we catch these stomata at a particular point in the day, which is usually mid-morning, right after the plants have woken up. And hopefully the humidity levels are a little bit higher in the room, resembling Mother Nature and similar to a morning dew. Well, right after this morning dew effect, whether it's in nature or replicated indoors or in a greenhouse, you are having the maximum uptake of CO2 possible. Why? Because your stomata on the bottoms of your leaves, they actually open and contract throughout the day, depending on vapor pressure deficit, depending on temperature, humidity, oxygen reduction potential, the amount of negative ions that are in the air, as well as wind and other variables. So when you have a stomata expanded to the right point, which stomata, this is where we come up with the number 300%, can contract and expand by up to 5 to 10 times, depending on the plant, depending on the strain, depending on the variety, depending on the day, depending on the phase in growth. Is it in veg? Is it in phase 1, 2, 3 of flowering of cannabis or of any other plant? Depending on all those variables, depending on when you can catch those stomata at their maximum opening point possible, that is your PVC outlet or your increased plumbing into the plant. Do you have a little baby tube going into your plant, or do you have a really huge tube going into your plant? That's the same thing as catching your stomata when they're correctly expanded on environmental triggers and characteristics. Now, when they are expanded, there's a second side of foliar feeding, which is nutrients, right? How much nutrients can we shove in through that gigantic pipe opening into the plant? Well, the third thing is biofilm. And when we look at biofilm, that's actually utilizing biology and enzymatic secretions from biology that's taken over and encapsulated the leaf in a biofilm on top of the leaf. And those bacteria are therefore intaking potentially O2 or CO2 and potentially excreting opposite of that. They're also excreting enzymes. They're also, like I like to call, a army that is set up on the leaf of your plant, so that if a bad microbe lands or a bad virus lands, what's going to happen? When we look at a lot of very effective fungicides as well as bactericides that people spray on plants, it's all biology based. When we have bad biology, we fight it with good biology. When we have bad algae, we fight it with good algae. When we have bad fungi, we fight it with good fungi. When we have bad people, we fight them with good people. Same thing. So whether it's in a foliar system, in a biofilm system, and how it interacts with a plant, well, then there's the fourth thing, which is the energy metabolic pathway expenditure that now the plant has gained due to having this biofilm. Just like humans, when your gut is teeming with microbes and beneficial probiotics and prebiotics and you're healthy, you don't get sick as often. If you eat like crap and you don't care about your biology and you drink, soda pop and things like that throw off your pH and your gut biota, it's going to kill off your gut biology like we talked about with water. Well, same thing here with plants. We inoculate biofilm on the leaves or on the roots to be able to transfer everything better, utilize the plant, and optimize its energy metabolic pathway, because those bacteria are alleviating energy expended by the plant that it would use to maintain its own immunity system for itself. So, yeah.
And I'll just add to that as well, to the whole biofilm thing. Like Tate said, it's with the gut. It's also like on our skin. Every inch of our skin is covered with good bacteria. And when and I apologize if this is going to offend anybody, but when we over sanitize and constantly are coating ourselves in hand sanitizer and antimicrobial this and insulating ourselves from the outdoors and things of that nature, it's actually leaving us even more vulnerable to harmful bacteria, because like Tate said, that army that's there to fend
it's an empty country
against the wall. Yeah, it's just an open plain now, and anybody who wants to come in can come in, and that's how you very much leave yourself to get become much more at risk to sickness and to disease and to bacterial infections and to viral infections and things of that nature. So it's, yeah. What was that, Taylor?
I said, well, COVID's a prime example.
Yeah, that's what I said. I hope I don't offend anybody, but no. This whole idea of lock everybody away and sanitize everything, sanitize. We're really doing ourselves more harm than good, because you're losing your own personal immunity that way, and you're not interacting with things and fighting against things and building your own immune system. You're stripping it away completely and leaving yourself completely open and vulnerable to anything that wants to come in.
Just get a vaccine, you'll be fine.
So, and again, we got to think of our plants in the same way. If you never inoculate that leaf surface with beneficial bacteria, if you never if you're not continually treating with good bacteria and things of that nature on the leaf surface, you're leaving your plant's skin and lungs open to any infection that wants to come in, be it bacterial or viral or whatnot. So the more, like Tate says, the more good that we can have to fend off the bad, is going to do you more good and build yourself more natural plant immunity, so you're not constantly fighting things throughout the life cycle.
1000%.
Well, this is great stuff, guys. Really, there's so much to it, and pardon the pun, but just scratching the surface, right? So, so much more we can talk about when it comes to water. What, if any, other questions did anyone have out there? Anything that we haven't covered today? I see we're already 8 minutes after the hour.
You sound like a robot.
Are you guys hearing me okay?
You sound like a straight up robot.
Yeah, I hear you. I think we're just getting maybe feedback.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was me about to chime in. I do have more questions, but sounds like Kyle, I need to pick your brain a little more. As to, I have some ideas that I'm playing with right now. I want to pick your brain. I'll call you a little later after the meeting.
I got you, Mike.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, we really appreciate you guys chiming in and coming. And we're excited because next week we are going to start increasing our frequency of the nerd sessions. And we're doing bug nerds next week with Kara.
Kara Day.
It's Bug Lady Day.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. We might even have some really cool videos from some bug droppings that I'm going to do here in my garden. So it should be pretty sweet. But does anybody have anything further for today or things for next time on how we can improve? We're always trying to get better at this. We are very much rookies. This is definitely like something that's very new for us. And yeah, we just want to make it as good as possible. It's all about interactivity with everybody.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Bug Girl, do you guys have praying mantises for sale?
I was just about to comment back. They're actually out of season right now. So unfortunately, we don't have any available. The best time to get them, if you are going to get them, though, is usually between February and May. You're going to have the highest viability hatch rates. So that's usually the time of year that you do want to get them.
Yeah, I have some. They're just not, there's not enough. So I want one.
You never have enough.
No, I actually keep a bug box. So.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah. I try.
But you are able to find like adults around. We just don't particularly raise them. It's kind of expensive to do so, but you might be able to find some from somewhere.
Well, like I said, I have some. They're just not breeding enough. I need lots.
So every extension office in every state of the country runs insectaries. So contact your extension office. They'll get you free bugs when you need them.
Really?
No.
Yep.
I'm on point, dude. That's it right there. Hell yeah. Thank you.
I did not know that.
Sorry, Taylor.
I did not know that. Wow.
Free bugs.
Collected out of the wild, so we don't have an insectary that we.
You don't need one if you're doing it your way. That's awesome. That's my preferred method as well.
Well, so there's just, I mean, you can only, so to Kyle's point, trying to draw on the conversation, you can only cover yourself, right? Your neighbors can harbor other things as well. And so a lot of times what we find in agriculture is we have somebody that wants to do something the right way, and their neighbor might be doing something.
Oh, I got my neighbor taken care of. He scares me.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So a lot of care about fences.
4th of July went off. My full automatics came out. It was on.
So I'm just saying bugs don't care about fences, and so extension offices run insectaries. So usually they have like parasitic wasps and other beneficials that you can drop to control either noxious weeds or other bugs.
Right. I just like praying mantises. They're hella creepy looking.
Little alien.
Ryan, I really appreciate that, man. That's a really good pro tip, Ryan. And I really appreciate that.
I have a quick question for Kara. We have leaf miners here in Barbados. What can we use to combat that as an actual insect?
Yeah, there are leaf miner parasites, but because they are in between the actual tissue of the leaves, they are kind of hard to control once they're already at that stage. So being as preventative as possible is really how you're going to gain the most control. And that's what we're going to go over next week, is because right now is really the time of year to, you know, start gaining control before they get out of control. So I can give you some suggestions, but again, there are specific parasites directly for leaf miners.
Well, that was a great preview for Bug Nerds. Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
And, you know, more and more.
More to come.
So thanks, everyone, for being on. It's another great show. Great job, Kate, Kyle, Taylor, Kara.
Thanks,
Matt,
guys.
Mike, everybody, Ryan, thank you so much for your participation. And let's keep it going. Spread the word. Let people know.
Till next week. Later, y'all. Holla, holla.
Okay, perfect.
See you then.
Key2lifesupply.com.
Let's make some money.
Yeah, keep it life.